what you brought up there around advice is something I've thought a lot about and was a big mindset shift for me when I started nomading, which was realizing that everyone gives advice from a place of personal bias. And so even though someone may be further ahead of you and they may even be on the path that you want to be on, they've lived a different life than you have, and they're going to give advice from a place of what has worked for them and kind of their sphere of knowledge and experiences. But that may not be right for you, and learning to like filter out certain things and to latch on to the ideas of like, okay, this actually resonates with me. This does not. In filtering that, which even from this one story that you told, it seems like that's something that you're at least conscious or subconscious of. I'd be curious to hear more, about your thoughts there, and maybe even becoming more self-aware to who you are and figuring out what to apply to you and what not to apply.
Yeah, a couple things came up for me. One is, first of all, in giving advice, I'm trying to do a much better job of slowing down giving advice. And so I start to ask more questions, because a lot of times when people say, even like I said, how do I have my own business? Cool. What do you think that means? What is that when you visualize having your own business? What even is that to you? Why do you want that? Is it because you want to have power and control? Is it because you want to work on cool projects? Is it because you imagine building a passive income for yourself? If you want a passive income, what do you want that for? I talked to a friend recently who said, I think I want to work for myself and have a passive income. Well, I'm not going to get rich at this job. What is rich? Why do you want to be rich, and what does that mean? So I'm asking a lot more questions before I start to give advice, because I have these definitions, these frameworks in my head, and I already know my bias. So now I can step up into where they are and say, what's really going on, rather than just like project a bunch of things that I'm holding onto them. And then sometimes the answer is, I'm not the right person to give you advice on this. Maybe I know somebody, maybe I can make an introduction. So I'm trying to go a lot slower. It's frustrating to the recipient of this sometimes, because they're like, would you just answer my question? And I'm thinking, I cannot until I have a lot more information. Like, I can't actually give you the next step until I know what step you're on now and where you think you're going. It could be that your vision of the future is not realistic or not something that I understand, and so I can't help you with that. So that's one thing I think about. Another thing I think about is just having a lot of modeling. So, I think about what kind of model in relationships, for example. Like, I didn't have a lot of relationship modeling in the house that I grew up in. My parents separated, and then didn't really get into long-term relationships until I was much older. And so I didn't see inside the house modeling of good, healthy relationships. And now I'm looking for people who have that and watching and seeing how they are. I have a lot of what I think of in my mind is like big brothers and sisters, people who are a little further down a path than me. They might even be younger than me, but they're just further down certain paths than I am. Just watching that, and maybe not to see who they are and what specifically they're doing, but just to know what's possible. And there's this idea, I heard it described as, I've never found this repeated, as one person said it, called evidence proof, which seems redundant, but it's this idea of like, the proof that this thing exists is the evidence that it exists. And so if I see something existing one time, then I know it's possible. And now I can design my life a little bit differently. And that doesn't mean that the people doing it know how I could do it, but I know it's possible. I know it's possible to educate your children outside of school and maybe in like a small like-minded community somewhere in Ecuador, because I heard people talking about it on a podcast.
Man, lot of interesting points, lot to unpack. The evidence proof one, I think, is a really interesting concept. You're spot on as far as when we see like, okay, I mean, when my digital nomadic journey, I was like, okay, this is real. Like, other people are doing. It's not a common path, but it is a path. And there are people who are successful financially in life, in relationships, who are doing this.